Stop 1. TH979. Tall, flask-form vase with Honan Tenmoku glaze. The East Asian glaze, known as Tenmoku, was first introduced widely to the West in 1946 through Bernard Leach's text A Potter's Book. In his book, he gave not only a brief description of the glaze, but several different formulations, including those used by the famous Japanese potter Soji Hamada, whose works are on display on the Tansu stairs in the rear gallery space. These glazed recipes and Leach's explanation of how their elements function enabled Western potters to begin creating their own Tenmoku glazes using local materials. The appeal of the Tenmoku glaze is that it is always different. Sometimes it is more black, sometimes more brown. In most cases, the glaze melts to create a combination of the two colors, often with some kind of molted or variegated streaking. Even more than that, the Tenmoku glaze has a complex and sophisticated depth to it. This depth, energy, and variation is the visual equivalent to the culinary manifestation of umami, a zone something akin to richness in human taste that has recently gained acceptance among chefs and food experts worldwide. As a result, umami, a word of Japanese origin, is increasingly added to the list of conventional human taste characteristics. In the hands of a master such as Brother Thomas, the Tenmoku glaze reaches the height of its potential for depth and profound beauty in the work seen in this exhibition. Stop 2. TH1605B, large vase with lid and Tenmoku glaze. All of the works featured in this exhibition, and indeed nearly all of the works created by Brother Thomas, are made of porcelain. What is this material, which is the foundation of these remarkable creations? Porcelain is a high-fired white ceramic material having characteristics of hardness, translucency when thin, and a musical ring when struck. It is not a naturally occurring substance in the sense that it can be dug up complete like pottery clay. Rather, it is a mix of kaolin and other materials. Porcelain originated in China, precisely when and where has never been firmly established, but it has been made there for well over 1,000 years. During the 15th and 16th centuries, Chinese porcelain began to find its way into Europe, where its whiteness, fine texture, hardness, and translucency appealed to Europeans. They pursued efforts to duplicate Chinese porcelain, and in 1709, the first European porcelain was produced. Before the end of the century, the secret for making porcelain had been spread all over Europe. But European and Chinese porcelains are different materials. This is because of the uniqueness of the Chinese materials, kaolin, and potency, which occur nowhere else in the world. In the early 19th century, bone china, which is a hybrid porcelain, emerged in England. This thin, highly translucent material was based on ash gathered from burnt and pulverized animal bones. Over the following centuries, bone china obscured true porcelain and became confused with it. But it is a distinct material. The porcelain used by Brother Thomas is technically of the European type, but was created using American minerals. Stop 3. TH1941B. Canteen-form vase with silver Tenmoku glaze. Historically, the canteen form was a pilgrim's bottle carried on a traveler's belt to contain water. It was originally made from animal skins and was pouch-shaped. When it began to be made of clay, the pouch shape was duplicated. This transition can be seen in examples of pilgrims' bottles from the Liao dynasty in China. Eventually, even within Liao times, the potters began to transform the pouch shape and to extend the function from a storage vessel for transportation into a vase form. By Song times, the form had evolved totally away from any resemblance to its origin. The use of the silver Tenmoku on this canteen is a lovely example of the range of variations and subtle incarnations that Thomas was able to achieve with the Tenmoku glaze. Stop 4. TH2033B. Large flask-form vase with Honan Tenmoku glaze. Brother Thomas's own words provide one of the greatest windows to seeing these works. About the Honan Tenmoku glaze, he said, "The Honan Tenmoku glaze, of all the classical glazes I do or have done, is the most emotional for me. The copper glazes with their brilliant reds, blues, and purples are striking and technically challenging. I have an ongoing affair with them. But this Honan glaze is my resting place. It seems somehow to sum up the art and the tradition of pottery for me." Stop 5. TH1255B, Millennial Egg Vase with Honan Tenmoku Glaze. Although for nearly 5 decades Brother Thomas's life was intensely focused on the creation of his art, he did not fail to connect with the complicated joys and tragedies of his broader community and world. Thomas created a series of millennial egg vases in the year 2000 to celebrate the new millennia as a time of great possibility for our society. He saw the millennia as an especially unique opportunity for humanity to acknowledge our ills and seek a path of truth and beauty. Of these works, he said, "The egg shape is a very wonderful thing to me. There is something about birth and death and even eternity in it. It is the simplest yet the fullest of all forms. Of all the forms, it is the one that seems to hold something within itself, ready at any moment to burst forth. These millennial eggs I have made not as a vessel of guilt, but as a sign of hope and responsibility that one day we will transform our love of power into our power of love. These egg forms came from my kiln over a period of a year and a half, and I began to notice that in spite of many depressing firings due to breakdowns in my kiln, none of the eggs failed. I lost many pieces in those firings, but I lost no eggs." Stop 6. TH1359B, Tea Bowl with Honan Tenmoku Glaze. Brother Thomas first traveled to Japan in 1978, which was a seminal experience in his artistic journey. He stressed that spirit emerged from the pottery of all times and expressed a shared continuity of spirit that is felt by all potters. The tea bowl seen here indeed reflects that continuity with the deep and rich history of this glaze and form, which dates to the Chinese Song dynasty when Tenmoku tea bowls first grew in popularity. These ceramics were developed at the kilns of the Fujian province in southeastern China for use in preparing and drinking the region's fine tea. Often the bowls had thick bodies, and when warmed they would retain heat so the tea would not cool quickly. Bowls of John were the most highly prized by the Chinese court during the Northern Song dynasty. And during the Southern Song dynasty, John tea bowls lost favor at court but continued to be used throughout southern China. In the late 12th century, Japanese Buddhist priests began coming to the Chinese temples to study. They found their Chinese teachers using the black-brown Johnware tea bowls to drink a whipped beverage known as cha, to keep them awake during meditation, which began very early in the morning. The early 14th century Japanese records indicate that the visiting priests knew these tea bowls originated at the John Kilns, but they also used the moniker Tenmoku for the bowls. Although documentation is sketchy, it is thought that the name was derived from Mount Tanmu in the Zhejiang province, where a sect temple was located. It is likely that visiting Japanese Buddhist monks encountered John teaware in use there and assigned the name of the mountain to the bowls. With the rise of underglaze decorated porcelain in China in the 14th century, the production of tea bowls with this glaze essentially died out. Because the wares remained popular in Japan, though, the native production center of Seto began to fire wares to meet domestic demand. Presumably, when the iron colorant glaze used on the Tenmoku style tea bowls was appropriated for use on other forms, it was still referred to as the Tenmoku glaze. This glaze was then passed down from generation to generation and transferred from kiln site to kiln site. Stop 7. TH609B, Samurai Form Vase with Honan Tenmoku Glaze. The samurai form is not made on the potter's wheel, but is hand-formed from slabs of porcelain. Brother Thomas said, "Despite its name, this was a peaceful and balanced form to me, even as it is full of energy. It is symbolic of the thoughtful solitude that is as much an ingredient of my work as any other. Perhaps the word warrior comes to mind most quickly upon hearing samurai, but Thomas reminds us that to fight for truth and beauty requires great thoughtfulness and calm rather than the violence that our society is quick to celebrate." Stop 8. TH2162, Large Square Plate with Khaki and Tenmoku Glaze. Brother Thomas did not accept a hierarchy of forms in his works, which would privilege decorative forms over functional items. He would often cite Romans, chapter 9, verses 20 and 21 when discussing the outstanding range of forms he created. Can the pot not speak to the potter and say, "Why did you make me like this?" Surely the potter can do whatever he likes with the clay. Is he not free to make out of the same lump two vessels, one to be treasured and the other for common use? This message of beauty spoken by the plate certainly could be heard when mounted on a wall or from the center of a table during the convivial sharing of a meal amongst friends and family. Stop 9. TH 1885. Large heart-formed vase with iron blue and Tenmoku glaze. Brother Thomas said, I struggle to express my intuition of the beautiful. I want my work to be as much a spiritual experience for others as it is for me. In order to experience these works as Thomas struggled to express them, let us learn more about his path as an artist and as a person. Brother Thomas was born Charles Bezanson in Halifax, Nova Scotia in 1929 and graduated from the Nova Scotia College of Design. He also received a degree in commerce from St. Mary's University, Halifax, and began at that time his work in ceramic art. In 1959, he became a monk of Weston Priory in Vermont, which is a community of Benedictine men. He continued both his art and his formal education while in Weston and received a Ph.D. in philosophy from Ottawa University, Ontario in 1968. Thomas said that being in Weston was a gift to him and to his art, and that he learned from his brother monks that the first extension of love and freedom is creativity, and without them there is no possibility for art to exist in our world. In 1984, he was awarded a grant by the National Endowment for the Arts, and from 1985 until his death in 2007, he worked as an artist in residence at Mount St. Benedict Monastery in Erie, Pennsylvania. As Brother Thomas developed his glazes, his goals were color, depth of surface, and uniqueness. Technology, he said, is the bridge or the barrier to realizing the intuition. Glaze is headwork, while the form is contemplative. Of the form of his pots, Thomas said, the line defines form and encloses a space. It gives at the same time the space within and the space without. Practice was, first to throw the pot, then having studied the line of the form, to choose the glaze so that each would enhance the other. He said, I feel like someone with a message to deliver, which is why the cycle of making a pot is completed only when I am able to share that message with others. That's the moment of completion, the shared mutual recognition of the beautiful. My work is from myself, but not of myself, or for myself. So please, take a moment to look closely at this vase with its blue pools of color at the top, its perfectly proportioned form, its flecks of gold as if the entire universe is contained in the surface. Take a moment to look and to see, because your presence amongst these works is the final element which makes them whole, and hopefully will bring a greater sense of wholeness to you as well. Stop 10. TH 898B. Vase with lid and Honan Tenmoku glaze. Over the past 35 years, Brother Thomas's work has been exhibited in more than 40 solo exhibitions. His pots are held in 60 public collections, including the National Institute of Chicago, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum in New York, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, and internationally in museum collections from Japan to Israel. He was the author of numerous articles, monographs, books, and lectures on art and its spiritual aspects. His work has been represented for 23 years by Pucker Gallery. Among ceramic artists, he was probably one of the most important of this generation, although Brother Thomas was unique in that he would destroy 90% of his work. He would focus on each piece, and it had to be a unique work. If it did not seem to have what he believed was truth and beauty, he would destroy it. Ultimately, it was never Thomas's intent to fill gallery spaces with his pottery to make a living, or to advance his work to museum collections to secure his artistic reputation. That was the inevitable and natural outcome of his devotion to his craft. With standards set higher than most could possibly sustain, he would critically evaluate every work he fired. It was through this devoted lens that he could produce such beautiful art. With over 50 years' commitment to both his art and the Benedictine order, Thomas never assumed or expected he would ever be held in the lexicon of great potters, and to speak with him would certainly go to prove that point. His easygoing nature belied an extraordinary intensity that would feed his continuous experimentation in both form and glaze. That same internal desire is also what would push him to invest his life in the study of religion and philosophy, and to conclude that in art, as in life, The thing we all strive for is to shape our humanity in the image of God, to do good, stand up for what is true, create what is beautiful, and to live for what unites and does not divide.